Long before the flood, before Noah's Ark, before the 10 Commandments, there was a hidden rebellion in heaven. 200 angels, known as the Watchers, descended to earth and broke the barrier between the divine and the human. They taught forbidden secrets, fathered monstrous offspring, and unleashed chaos so great that God himself had to intervene. Their story is buried in the book of Enoch, hidden from most Bibles, and it explains where demons truly come from. This is not myth, it's the forgotten history of the Watchers and their terrifying judgment. From the dawn of time, the Bible tells us that heaven and earth angels dwelt in the glory of heaven, created as mighty beings of light to serve and worship their Creator. Humanity, meanwhile, walked the earth, made in God's image, but fragile, mortal, and subject to temptation. Yet within this design, something happened that would change human history forever. A group of angels, known as the Watchers, would abandon their divine station and make a fateful decision that would bring judgment not only upon themselves, but upon all creation. The story comes to us in fragments. The Bible hints at it. In Genesis 6, verse 1-4, we read, "When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown." At first glance, this passage seems cryptic. Who were these sons of God? And who were the Nephilim, these mighty giants of renown? The book of Genesis gives no further explanation, but the book of Enoch, a text treasured by the ancient Hebrews, quoted in the New Testament book of Jude, and still preserved in the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, pulls back the veil with startling detail. According to Enoch, the sons of God were a group of heavenly beings known as the Watchers, tasked with observing humanity and watching over them. They were not ordinary angels, but guardians assigned to keep watch. For ages they remained faithful, but in time their eyes fell upon the daughters of men, and a forbidden desire took root in their hearts. Enoch tells us that there were 200 of these angels, mighty and radiant beings of heaven. Their leader was named Semjaza, also called Shemyaza. He was a high-ranking watcher, powerful and respected among his kind. Yet it was he who conceived the plan that would unravel heaven's order. The story begins at Mount Hermon, a towering mountain. To the ancients, this mountain was a place of great mystery, often associated with the divine. And it was here, according to Enoch, that the Watchers gathered to make their fateful decision. Semjaza spoke first. His words were filled with conviction, but also with temptation. He looked upon his fellow angels and confessed the desire that burned within him. "Let us choose wives from among the children of men and beget children for ourselves." But the other Watchers hesitated. They knew the consequences. They knew this act would be rebellion against the will of God. To descend to earth, to take human wives, to abandon their place in heaven, this was not only disobedience, it was cosmic treason. So Semjaza proposed something that would bind them all together. He said, "I fear that you may not agree to this deed, and I alone will have to face the penalty of this great sin." And so he suggested an oath, an unbreakable pact, that all 200 would swear together. In unity they would bear the guilt, and in unity they would share the fate. The angels agreed. One by one their voices rose, and on the summit of Mount Hermon they swore the oath together, binding themselves in rebellion against their Creator. The book of Enoch tells us, "And they all answered him and said, 'Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations not to abandon this plan but to do this thing.' Then they all swore together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were in all 200, who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon, and they called it Mount Hermon, because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it." Enoch 6, verse 3-6. It was at this moment that heaven's order was shattered. The 200 Watchers, mighty angels of light, chose darkness. They abandoned their holy station, left their posts in the heavens, and descended into the world of men. The names of some of these watchers are preserved in Enoch. Semjaza, their leader. Azazel, who would later teach men the secrets of war, weapons, and cosmetics. Armaros, who taught enchantments. Barakijal, who revealed astrology. Kokabiel, who taught the constellations. Penemu, who revealed the art of writing and ink. And Sariel, who taught the course of the moon. Each of these names carries a trace of their heavenly identity, but their deeds mark them as traitors to the Most High. Why did they do it? Why would beings of light, who had stood in the presence of God, choose to abandon heaven for earth? The answer lies in the corruption of desire. The watchers looked upon the beauty of human women, and lust grew within them. They were captivated not by divine glory, but by earthly flesh. They longed to experience the passions of mortality, the pleasures forbidden to them as celestial beings. But more than that, they sought power. In their union with humanity, they would create offspring unlike anything the world had ever seen. Giants, warriors, and beings of immense strength. The Watchers dreamed of ruling the earth through their children, raising up a race that would dominate humanity and exalt themselves above God's design. Thus, with their oath sealed, the Watchers descended. They cloaked themselves in human form, taking wives from among the daughters of men. The women bore children to them, children known as the Nephilim. These giants were said to be immense in stature, terrifying in strength, and insatiable in appetite. They devoured not only food, but men, beasts, and even each other. The earth groaned under the weight of their violence. The Watchers, meanwhile, began to corrupt humanity in another way. They revealed secrets not meant for mankind, heavenly mysteries that twisted into weapons of destruction. Azazel taught men how to forge swords, knives, shields, and breastplates, bringing the knowledge of war. He also revealed the use of cosmetics and jewelry, leading women into vanity and seduction. Other Watchers taught sorcery, enchantments, the signs of the stars, and the secrets of herbs and roots. At first, humanity marveled at this knowledge. They saw it as a gift from the gods. But in truth, it was a curse. For these forbidden teachings led to corruption, bloodshed, and idolatry. The world was spiraling into chaos, and at the heart of it were the Watchers, who had abandoned heaven's light for the darkness of earth. And so the rebellion of the Watchers was complete. What began as a forbidden desire had turned into a full-scale revolt against the divine order. These angels had not merely broken a command, they had reshaped the destiny of the world. By leaving heaven, they blurred the line between the divine and human, unleashing consequences so severe that God would later send a flood to cleanse the earth. Yet the Watchers' story was not over. Their rebellion had only begun, and their fate would soon be sealed in chains of darkness. But for now, they reveled in their sin, intoxicated by power, lust, and the might of their offspring. And the world trembled beneath them. The rebellion of the Watchers stands as one of the most haunting tales of ancient scripture. It is a story of desire turned to ruin, of angels turned into traitors, of heaven abandoned for earth. And it all began on the summit of Mount Hermon, with 200 voices swearing an oath that would echo through eternity. When the Watchers, the angels who abandoned heaven, descended to earth, they did not come alone in purpose. They were drawn to human women, and from these unions, a terrifying new generation emerged, the Nephilim. These were no ordinary children. They were giants, beings of immense size, strength, and unnatural power, carrying the blood of both the divine and the mortal. The Bible, in Genesis 6, verse 4, gives us a chilling hint of their presence. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These giants, the Nephilim, were said to tower over men, their sheer size inspiring awe and fear. But it was not just their physical stature that made them extraordinary. It was the chaos they brought into the world. Societies that once thrived in peace were thrown into turmoil. Crops were trampled underfoot, villages destroyed by their immense strength, and fear rippled across the land like wildfire. Ordinary humans could not stand against them. Swords and spears were little more than toys in the hands of these giants. Their presence changed the very fabric of civilization, leaving trails of devastation in every direction. The Nephilim were not just violent, they were ravenous. Ancient texts and interpretations suggest that cannibalism became a horrifying aspect of their existence. Driven by insatiable appetites, they consumed both animals and humans, creating a society built on bloodshed and terror. Families lived in constant fear, and legends tell of entire towns wiped out simply because they crossed paths with these towering beings. The moral order of the world crumbled, and violence became a defining characteristic of human life at the time. But it was not just brute force that made the Nephilim so dangerous. Their angelic lineage granted them knowledge that far surpassed that of ordinary humans. They could manipulate, deceive, and dominate, blending supernatural cunning with physical might. They taught humans secrets that were never meant to be known, turning wisdom into a tool of corruption. Metals were forged into weapons, magical practices were learned, and forbidden knowledge spread like wildfire. The corruption of humanity and the chaos of the Nephilim became intertwined, each feeding the other in a deadly cycle. Stories also speak of their sheer numbers. While the Bible offers glimpses, texts like the Book of Enoch expand on their proliferation, describing hundreds, perhaps thousands, roaming the earth. Each new generation seemed to grow more uncontrollable than the last, a direct consequence of the union between the divine and the mortal. Human societies could barely cope with the scale of destruction, leading to widespread despair and a growing cry for divine intervention. It was this chaos, the unrestrained violence, the cannibalistic tendencies, the overwhelming presence of these giants, that prompted God to act. Humanity, once innocent and thriving, had become a playground for destruction. The Nephilim's reign was marked not by governance or leadership, but by unchecked brutality. Cities were abandoned, families slaughtered, and the natural world itself seemed under siege. The story of the Nephilim serves as a dark warning. When divine power mixes with human weakness, the results can be catastrophic. Their legacy, though short-lived in the grand timeline of history, left an indelible mark on biblical memory and the imagination of humankind. Tales of giants, monsters, and bloodthirsty beings across cultures may trace their roots back to this extraordinary and terrifying chapter of early human history. And so the Nephilim, the children of angels and women, remain one of the most haunting figures in biblical lore. A terrifying bridge between the divine and the mortal, whose lives were defined by destruction, bloodshed, and insatiable hunger. Their story sets the stage for one of the most dramatic divine interventions in history, the flood, designed to cleanse the earth of their violence and restore balance to a world on the brink of annihilation. As the Nephilim's reign of terror grew unchecked, humanity's cries for deliverance echoed across the earth, rising like a desperate hymn to the heavens. Families cowered in fear as giants trampled villages, rivers ran red with blood, and the innocent were devoured by beings of unnatural strength. The prayers of the righteous, once whispered in quiet devotion, became urgent shouts, a chorus pleading for justice, protection, and the restoration of order. God heard these cries. He saw the corruption, the violence, and the pain inflicted by the Watcher's offspring, the Nephilim. The divine response was swift and deliberate. 4 of heaven's mightiest archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, were dispatched to intervene, each with a distinct role in restoring balance and delivering judgment. Michael, the warrior of God, led the charge against the Watchers. With the authority of heaven behind him, he bound the angels who had abandoned their posts, chaining them in the depths of the earth, where they could no longer wreak havoc on humankind. Gabriel, the messenger, declared the divine verdict to the Watchers, ensuring that their fate was known and understood. Their rebellion could not go unpunished. Raphael, the healer and protector, attended to the righteous who had suffered under the giants, guiding them, preserving their lives, and teaching them ways to endure in a world overwhelmed by chaos. Uriel, the angel of wisdom and light, revealed the hidden knowledge of the coming judgment, warning humanity and preparing them for the cleansing that was about to come. The binding of the Watchers was not merely a punishment, it was a cosmic act of order. These angels, once powerful emissaries of heaven, had overstepped their bounds, and now they were restrained, their influence cut off from the mortal world. Yet their impact would linger, for their offspring, the Nephilim, were not entirely destroyed. The giants' physical bodies would soon perish, but the corruption they had introduced into the world could not be erased by simple chains. It was time for a more radical solution. God, seeing that the earth itself had become a battlefield of sin and violence, decreed a great cleansing. The flood, a cataclysmic deluge that would sweep across the world, was to wash away the corruption and restore the earth to a state of purity. Torrents of rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights, submerging cities, forests, and plains. The Nephilim, immense as they were, could not withstand the waters. Humanity, too, was saved only by the righteousness of a few, Noah and his family, whose obedience and faith preserved a seed of life for the world to come. Yet even in their destruction, the influence of the Nephilim could not be entirely erased. Ancient texts and interpretations suggest that their spirits, too powerful and unnatural to simply vanish, transformed into beings now known as demons. These were no ordinary spirits. They were the remnants of angels' rebellion and human corruption, entities caught between the divine and the mortal. In the unseen realms, they carried the memory of their earthly violence, seeking to influence, tempt, and torment humanity in ways subtle and insidious. Raphael's role extended even beyond the flood. As humans emerged from the ark, he taught them how to protect themselves from the lingering influence of these spirits, instructing them in prayer, purification, and the pursuit of righteousness. Uriel's guidance ensured that knowledge of divine law and the consequences of sin were preserved, so that humanity could avoid repeating the same mistakes that had allowed the Watchers and their offspring to dominate the earth. The flood was both an end and a beginning. It ended the physical presence of the Nephilim and the unrestrained violence they had brought, but it marked the birth of a new, hidden struggle. The spirits of the Nephilim, now demons, became part of the unseen world, influencing events, tempting human hearts, and continuing the struggle between good and evil. They are often invisible, yet their presence is felt in the darkness of human sin, the whisper of temptation, and the chaos that still erupts in a world struggling between divine order and corruption. The Archangel's mission set the template for cosmic balance. Michael's vigilance continues, watching over humanity in the spiritual battles that rage unseen. Gabriel's messages still arrive, whether in visions, intuition, or divine inspiration, guiding humanity toward righteousness. Raphael's healing extends into the protection of body and soul, ensuring that those who follow divine guidance can endure the unseen spiritual warfare. And Uriel's wisdom illuminates the path of those seeking understanding, revealing hidden truths and divine law. Even today, the legacy of the Nephilim is visible, not in towering giants walking the earth, but in the unseen influence of their spirits. They are the demons, the tempters, the forces that challenge human morality and faith. Their presence reminds humanity of the catastrophic consequences when divine boundaries are crossed and when the cries of the innocent go unheard. And yet, the story is also one of hope. Humanity survived the flood, guided by the Archangel's intervention. The righteous were preserved, the corrupt punished, and the divine order restored. The unseen world remains a battleground, but the vigilance of heaven ensures that balance is maintained. Every act of courage, every prayer of the righteous, and every moment of divine guidance echoes the story of that ancient struggle. A reminder that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, there is a force greater than chaos, watching, protecting, and guiding. The flood and the binding of the Watchers marked the most dramatic turning points in the story of early humanity. A cataclysm that cleansed the world of corruption, and a transformation that gave rise to unseen forces that still influence the world today. It is a tale of destruction, judgment, and rebirth. A story where heaven intervened to save humanity, where angels fought and bound their rebellious kin, and where the spirits of giants became the demons that challenge human hearts in every age. After the flood had cleansed the earth, Enoch, the righteous scribe and prophet, was granted visions of what was yet to come, a glimpse into the ultimate fate of the Watchers, the Nephilim, and the forces of darkness. These visions, recorded in the book of Enoch, revealed a future where divine justice would finally be absolute, and where the corruption introduced by the fallen angels would be confronted once and for all. Enoch saw the Watchers, bound and imprisoned beneath the earth, awaiting their final judgment. Their rebellion, their pride, and the devastation they had wrought would not go unpunished. The prophet's vision described a terrifying but ordered end. The wicked, the corrupt, and the spirits of the Nephilim would be cast into a place of eternal torment, the lake of fire. It is a realm of unquenchable fire, a prison of eternal separation from God, where the consequences of rebellion are manifest in relentless judgment. Yet amidst the terrifying imagery, Enoch's visions carried a message of hope. The righteous, those who had endured the flood and remained faithful to God, would see restoration. Humanity would be renewed, life would flourish again, and the earth would heal from the scars of violence and corruption. The prophecy emphasized that God's justice is not only about punishment, it is about restoration, the re-establishment of balance, and the triumph of righteousness over chaos. The final judgment serves as a reminder that every act of corruption, every transgression, and every rebellion has consequences. Yet it also promises that hope persists. Through obedience, faith, and righteous living, humanity can endure even the greatest of trials. The visions of Enoch assure us that the forces of evil, no matter how powerful or terrifying, are not eternal. They are contained, judged, and ultimately defeated. In the end, the story of the Watchers, the Nephilim, and the flood is not just one of destruction. It is a story of divine justice, cosmic balance, and the enduring hope of restoration. Enoch's prophecy reminds humanity that no matter the darkness, there is light waiting at the end of the journey, and that righteousness and faith will ultimately prevail.